Bodybuilding is the toning, shaping, sculpting, and building of the skeletal muscles of the body using the system of weight training pioneered and developed by serious bodybuilders over the past 50 years. The most efficient and effective system of exercise ever created.
It's good for everyone of all ages.
Something that you just have to try once.
It's something that everybody should do.
It can work for anybody.
If you want to look better, bodybuilding will do it.
If your muscles are strong, you're going to hold yourself up better. You'll be able to play tennis until you're 95 years old. You'll be able to go for your long walks in the hills until you're 95 years old. Instead of letting age control your life, you control your age. You control your life.
There are millions of people who do bodybuilding every day and don't know it. Certainly, if you train in a serious bodybuilding gym, you're a bodybuilder. However, if you work out in a health club or spa, whether you use exercise machines, cables, or free weights, you're also a bodybuilder. Even if you limit yourself to sit-ups, push-ups, and other calisthenics, you're still a bodybuilder. Because you really only have two choices. You can build your body or let it deteriorate. And young or old, male or female, athletic or not, intent on a career as a competitive bodybuilder, or simply interested in health and fitness, if you're going to build your body, you might as well do it effectively. And that's what the Weider system is all about.
These videos that you're about to see removes the mystery of bodybuilding, explaining step by step all the rules and techniques you need to know about building your body safely. In these tapes, my champions show you exactly how to use our Weider principles that lay the foundation for creating modern bodybuilding. These principles are responsible for the powerfully built physiques you see today. So you're in good hands. Let the champions start showing you now exactly how you too can muscle up.
The Weider system.
The Weider system is basically a way of life.
Is almost a must.
You can use the Weider system just to bring your body up to the level you want to.
It is for everyone. You know, if you're going to work out, if you're going to be in fitness, you might as well get the best advice you can. And that advice is going to come in the form of, whether it's direct or indirect, the Weider systems.
The Weider system for me has really helped me train properly.
Now you have an advanced formula that you can follow and get involved with and get in touch with and take it on yourself as far as learning your own style and technique of training.
You can't just go in blind.
If you've got a system there that you can follow, it's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort.
You have to know how the body works. You have to know how the body responds to nutrition, how it responds to supplements. That's very important.
It takes it from an A to Z basis, whereby it's a gradual process of taking it from layperson.
The general guy just getting started.
Someone who just basically goes in and knows absolutely nothing about the body.
A 9-to-5er or a full-time student.
Right up to
be a champion bodybuilder.
Mr. Olympia.
Miss Olympia.
Or Mr. America or Mr. Universe or even Mr. Neighborhood for that matter to implement the Weider system.
And that's the benefit of it, that you can refer back to these courses constantly.
I'm a believer in the Weider system. And if you want a bodybuilding physique, you better be too.
I'm living proof that the Weider systems work.
It's essential that you have good direction like Weider courses.
Remember that everybody starts somewhere. We all start skinny or fat or somewhere in between, but basically we don't like the way that we look now. But then you have the choice to do something about it, and that's what the Weider system is all about, getting that body that you want. So get her if you can, and let's do it right now.
In the Weider system, bodybuilding is accomplished by weight training, the stimulation of muscular development, not weightlifting. You develop muscles indirectly, training to stimulate the nervous system, which sends messages to the muscles, causing them to adapt, grow stronger and bigger. Here's how it works.
The Weider system is based on the concept of progressive resistance training. As your muscles get stronger, you increase the weight or set up the intensity to continue to challenge them.
If you want to make progress, you have to use the Weider principles.
And it's not the same course that was made together like the Charles Atlas course was put out in 1921-22. It's the same course now, some 70 years later, but the Weider course has been updated constantly, and this is where Joe's scored, because he's updated it with the most modern methods and the most modern techniques.
Actually took his principles and put them down on paper.
And put them all together in a way that people can understand them and use them.
Took all the methods that Reeves was using, that Grimmick was using, that Ross was using, that I was using, and he compiled them into the Weider courses.
You'd be surprised at what you can do with information. That's your arsenal.
One of the problems that I found in the gym is that you have a variety of different people giving you their opinions on how to train, whereas with the Weider system, you have one person giving you all the information you need on how to become a success in bodybuilding.
Joe Weider.
Joe Weider.
Joe Weider.
Joe Weider helped me a lot.
Weider has definitely helped me.
If it wasn't for Joe Weider, I probably wouldn't have this wonderful career that I have today.
I'm a very close friend of Joe Weider, and I'm, of course, one of those millions and millions of bodybuilders that have been inspired by Joe Weider and by his magazines. Ever since I was a 15-year-old boy in Austria, I've been reading his magazines, have been inspired by them, trained every day according to the Weider principles, and my goal was to be Mr. Universe. And I think it was because of Joe Weider's dedication and love for the sport. He saw the opportunities and the kind of potential that I had when I was in Austria, and he invited me to come to America. He gave me the chance. He opened up the doors of opportunities for me to come to America, to train here in the United States, and to develop myself into a world champion bodybuilder.
Joe Weider has been in business before I was born.
The guy's been around a long time, since 1936.
The Weider system is a comprehensive video program that covers a wide range of topics, ranging from weight training and fitness to diet, nutrition, and sports medicine. Joe Weider has assembled more than 40 international bodybuilding champions, as well as a wide range of experts from the Weider Research Group to create the most dynamic series of training videos ever conceived. Maybe the best training videos there ever will be. Cheating in weight training refers to using extra muscles or techniques like swinging the weight up using inertia to help perform the lift. Instead, lift and lower the weight using the specific muscles involved in that lift, with no help from other muscles and no cheating.
I don't cheat. You know, I don't use cheating principles. Sometimes I will when I'm weaker and I'm dieting and I'm not feeling really energy. I'll need to cheat a little bit because I don't have a trainer or someone that helps me.
Continuous tension. When you lift or lower a weight, you should feel your muscles working smoothly throughout the whole range of motion. This means not only lifting the weight under control to a position of peak contraction, but lowering the weight under control as well, rather than letting it drop.
Throughout the movement, you keep the tension on that body part, so you never really lock out, because a lot of times when you lock out, you know, you could stay in that position for quite some time. There's no pain there. So what you want to do is keep the tension on that body part.
The most impressive thing to me is when a bodybuilder is standing on stage in the relaxed pose and they have the V taper from the lats down to a small waist, and then they're small hips, and then they come out with the balloon thighs.
Control the weight. Don't let it control you. And to squeeze in the repetitions, control it. That brings in the detail.
This is a good place to talk about supination. Any bodybuilder will tell you that to fully peak the biceps when you hit a pose, you need to twist the wrist or supinate it as far as possible. This applies to training as well. As you are lifting the weight during a dumbbell curl, twist the wrist slightly, turn your thumb outward as you do the curl.
One thing to remember when you're training biceps is they get a large volume of work when you're training other compound movements like back, and it's getting a tremendous amount of work. That's why it's so important to isolate the bicep and not cheat and not end up using your traps and shoulders and pecs when you're training your biceps by themselves. You have to learn to isolate and concentrate on the muscle group you're training.
The basic mistake we often see in the gym when it comes to training chest is that there's too much pressing of the arms and not enough work from the pecs themselves. To properly develop the chest, the shoulders have to go forward from a backward shrug position to where the pecs are squeezed to the point of full contraction. If the shoulders don't go forward, then the pecs aren't worked directly.
A common mistake that a lot of bodybuilders make when they're doing flying type exercises is trying to go too heavy. Now, flies for the most part are generally an isolation exercise and not really a mass building exercise. In fact, I've seen a lot of world champion bodybuilders go into the gym and just use like a 25 or 30-pound dumbbell and really isolate the muscle and learn how to feel the muscle effectively. One of the things that can happen when you do a fly too heavy is that you can strain or tear a pec insertion or a bicep muscle. So you want to be really careful to isolate the muscle and really learn how to feel it.
Work those triceps. Work for balance and symmetry throughout your body.
Bodybuilding isn't just about building muscles. It's about aesthetics, about building proportion, symmetry, and the sleekness of the relationship from one muscle group to the other. So if you do it all together, you're going to get a beautiful body.
Training the long head of the triceps is also an important part of the routine. The long head's fully extended when you're in a position with your elbow raised. You can feel the increase in tension down the back of the arm. Therefore, you need to do at least one exercise in your triceps routine that works the arm in this position.
Leg exercises include leg press and various types of squats. Actually, the leg press exercise involves a lot of different muscles, affecting it to a different degree depending on where you are in your range of movement.
I double my weight on a leg press than I do with a squat because it is more of a controlled movement. You don't have to worry about balancing. If you have a back problem or lower back problem or any knee problems that I do have, I usually find myself on the leg press more so than the squat rack now.
The three-head deltoid muscle covers the shoulder joint ventrally, dorsally, and laterally. It flexes, extends, and rotates the arm medially and laterally.
One of the things is that you have to work proper technique. And I wasn't using the proper technique exactly, so I was hitting a lot more of my front delts instead of my side or medial delts. So then I had to really concentrate on the side lateral movements, doing the movement correctly, so that I can really get that wideness on the medial head, so that when you're on stage, you have that appearance of looking a lot wider. With that wider appearance, you'll make your waist look smaller and look more symmetrical.
Not just good biceps and triceps. You gotta train your forearms. Everybody wants to see the forearms. It makes a nice, complete arm.
You want to use basic movements such as power clean movements. You want to use all your push-pull basic movements, presses, overhead, squatting to build overall body mass.
And for the back, it would be T-bar rowing.
For your back, bend over T-bar, lat thickness building movements. Leg pressing, for example, is my favorite for the leg building.
Of course, training heavy with free weights doesn't mean you forget everything you know about technique, how muscles work, and what angles to work them to get the best results.
Working a rear or behind the neck press will bring your arms more back so that you can hit slightly on the side delt as also the front delt, but it is a mass exercise. When you're doing front presses or military presses, you're working more on just your front head of your delts when you're working out. Then when you get to use dumbbells, you get more freedom of motion to work, each arm individually, plus you can rotate the arms in different ways. We can get a different feel on the deltoid, working the side and also the front.
Of course, when you say the word diet, everyone automatically assumes you're talking about dieting to lose fat. But diet should really include all aspects of how and what you eat, for all sorts of purposes. Eating for energy to help you exercise, to help you build muscle, and for those individuals who feel they are too skinny rather than too fat, to gain shapely, proportionate, lean body mass. For example, bodybuilders don't only have to lower their body fat, they have to build the kind of quality muscle that results in a competitive physique. And they have to maintain as much of that muscle as possible, even while dieting for fat loss. This means paying a lot of attention to nutrition, what they eat, rather than just how much they eat.
The Burns principle is when you do a complete set, full range of motion, then doing partial repetitions, forcing more blood and oxygen into the muscle.
Once more on each arm. That's it. Now do a few, 4 short little burns, halfway up. That's it. That's it. Halfway up. That's it. Turn your wrist. That's it. Get the bicep up. Get that peak. That's it. Turn your little finger towards your shoulder. That's it. Once more with this arm, and you're all set. There.
One of the worst mistakes a bodybuilder can make is training too heavy. When you try to work with too much weight, it's impossible to do the exercises correctly or effectively. You may be training hard, but you won't get the kind of results you expect. Not only that, but subjecting your muscles to weights they aren't prepared to handle substantially increases your risk of training injury.
I'm not interested in trying to impress other people in the gym by training with very heavy weight or weight that I really cannot control.
I don't go in the gym throwing heavy weights around. You see a lot of guys, they go in the gym, they just start piling weights on the bar, they're grunting, they're groaning, and they're banging out reps with whatever they're doing. I don't do that. Weight doesn't impress me.
In the Weider system, with a variety of different principles, you will know how to build mass, size, definition. You'll learn how to put on weight, take off weight. You will learn how to build energy, create power for sports, for the enjoyment of life, whatever you want. Just follow the advice of the champions that appear in my tape. They have gone through many years of training. They have utilized the Weider principles. They have become great champions. In these tapes, they're going to tell you exactly how you could use these tapes, apply these techniques that have been in vogue since 1936. That revolutionized and established the basis of modern bodybuilding. Put these techniques to work for you. The Weider principle of the split system is the most important principle in your bodybuilding program. Because without an understanding and the application of the Weider split system, you'll never be able to achieve a symmetrical and well-proportionate body.
There are hundreds of thousands, even millions of people, men and women, working out in gyms around the world. But very few of them look like bodybuilders. Why? Well, certainly genetics has something to do with it. Some people are just more physically talented than others when it comes to building muscle. But another reason is simply this. To look like a bodybuilder, you need to train like a bodybuilder. Simply lifting weights without an understanding of what kind of program you need to achieve your goals just doesn't work. If just lifting heavy and working hard were all it took, then a ditch digger or construction worker would end up winning the Mr. Olympia contest.
Hi, I'm Bob Paris. Now, when you're in the gym, intensity and hard work are very important, but it's not enough just to work hard. You need to learn to work smart also. You should be going for an intensity of effort in the gym and also an intensity of effect. The exercises that you're doing should have the most maximized effect on the muscles themselves. It's not just enough to push the weight. You have to know how the body part is actually working to have the most effective outcome of the exercise. When we look at the sport of bodybuilding, it's very similar to other sports. If you want to become a great runner, you run. If you want to become a great cyclist, you ride a bicycle. If you want to look like a bodybuilder, You need to train like a bodybuilder. You need to train in a sport-specific manner.
Specificity of training means that the body responds and adapts very specifically to the kind of workout you put it through, much more specifically than you think. That's why different sports, from sprinting to marathon running to gymnastics to shot putting, all require very different kinds of training and physical preparation. And that's why it's so difficult to do well in multi-event sports like the decathlon or heptathlon, and why there are so few great athletes who compete successfully in more than one sport at the highest levels.
In this sense, your body reacts to training like a computer. When you're training, you're sending a specific program to the central nervous system. And anybody that's worked with a computer can tell you that a computer will respond only to specific instructions. Your body is the same way. It doesn't care what you're trying to do. It only reacts to exercises specifically as they are applied.
Over the past 50 years or so, bodybuilders have learned, largely by trial and error, what kind of workout the muscles of the body best respond to. And the proof that they've discovered something really new is the way they look. No human beings in all of history, male or female, have developed the kind of physiques you see on stage at a top professional bodybuilding contest. Critics of the sport sometimes claim that this incredible advancement in the ability of human beings to develop their lean body structure is the result of improved nutrition, anabolic drugs, or simply the fact that there are more bodybuilders working out more seriously than ever before. But it's really the type of training that you'll learn from the Weider system that has made the difference. The modern bodybuilding workout was developed to address the natural, genetically determined capacity of the body to respond to the muscle training, the physiological programming that is inherent in the neuromuscular system itself. It's the most effective and efficient form of muscle training ever conceived.
So if you're going in the gym to develop your lean body structure, being a competitor or not, why do it any other way? After all, the body is a homeostatic organism. That means that it tends to resist change, whether the change is good or bad. That's why people can abuse their bodies for such a long period of time before they actually see serious damage.
So it follows that to make dramatic improvements in your physical structure, you have to find some way to force your body to change. You have to subject it to a program that's so intense and effective that it has no choice but to respond. And that's what bodybuilding type weight training is all about.
The basis of any kind of weight training is the principle of progressive resistance. That is, when you take a significant amount of resistance and work your muscles against it. While using this resistance, your muscles will tend to get stronger and bigger. As your muscles get bigger and stronger, you have to start slapping on more weight to build more muscle size. This is the Weider principle of progressive resistance. It's a good principle, it's a smart principle, use it.
There's a Greek myth that goes back thousands of years which describes the process exactly. Milos of Crotona is said to have begun picking up and lifting a young calf every day. As the calf grew larger and heavier, he continued this practice and therefore grew progressively stronger to the point where he was still able to lift the animal when it became a full-grown bull. This is exactly what you do with bodybuilding type weight training. Only instead of hefting farm animals, you use barbells, dumbbells, and various types of machines to provide the necessary resistance.
The idea of progressive resistance is that the muscle adapts as a greater load is put on that muscle during the time of doing resistance training. Progressive resistance means either increasing the intensity in one of two ways, either a greater workload by the number of repetitions or a greater workload by the number of pounds that are placed on a bar or on the piece of equipment.
We have muscles because we live in a gravity well. Our muscles allow us to overcome the force of gravity and move around the surface of the planet. In addition to gravity, muscles also adapt to the kinds of loads we subject them to. For example, if you have a 10 horsepower motor and you subject it to a 12 horsepower load, it'll burn out. However, subject the equivalent 10 horsepower muscle to a 12 horsepower load, and you eventually get a 12 horsepower muscle.
The key to progress in bodybuilding is to overload the muscle. Just enough to cause it to grow, but not enough to cause injury, and to continue to increase the amount of load on a regular basis as the muscle gets bigger and stronger.
There are basically two types of muscle fiber. Red, aerobic fiber, is long-distance endurance fiber, capable of contracting over and over for long periods of time. White anaerobic fiber, on the other hand, is short-duration sprint fiber, lacking in endurance, but is 22% larger than red fiber and capable of generating much more power. Everybody has some of both types of fiber in their bodies, although the amount of fibers and the distribution of fiber types in various muscles of the body varies tremendously from individual to individual. And it's the kind of fiber that predominates in the body that largely determines what kind of performance that body is best suited for. Just think of the difference between a muscular sprinter and a lean endurance runner. Both types of fiber can be made bigger and stronger or hypertrophied by weight training, and top bodybuilders seem to need a mixture of both fiber types in order to be successful. If a bodybuilder is too mesomorphic, has too much thick white fiber, he or she may be too blocky and lack aesthetics to win bodybuilding contests. They may be better suited, perhaps, to something like weightlifting. If a bodybuilder is too ectomorphic, has too much lean red fiber, he or she may excel in aesthetics, but have trouble building sufficient mass. Incidentally, there is more to muscle size, shape, and volume than muscle fibers. Muscle cells are complex, and the bodybuilding look also involves things like mitochondrial mass, the size of the internal organs of the cells that produce energy, glycogenation, the amount of carbohydrate energy stored within the cell, the blood supply to the muscle, and water. Did you know that muscles are about 75% water?
The basic unit in bodybuilding training is the repetition. Now, a repetition is made up of two key points. It's basically going to be the full extension of the muscle when the muscle is fully stretched out, and the full contraction of the muscle when the muscle is bunched up and is pulled together and shortened. So a repetition is going to be going back and forth between that extension and that contraction on every single body part. Now, repetitions combined together constitute a set. So a set, let's say in your workout, you are supposed to do a set of 12 repetitions. What you would be doing is 12 times in a row, be going from this contraction position to the extension position, back and forth until you get to 12. And that would constitute a set of the exercise.
A basic set in bodybuilding usually consists of 8 to 12 repetitions. Why this number? Trial and error experience and some independent scientific research has shown that the muscle tends to grow best when subjected to about 70 to 75% of its 1 rep maximum strength, the maximum amount of weight the muscles can lift in that exercise one time. And when you do as many sets as you can with this amount of weight, you end up doing somewhere from 8 to 12 reps. Therefore, as you begin bodybuilding training with the Weider system, pick a weight for any exercise that lets you do at least 8 repetitions, but not so light you can do more than 12. An exercise consists of a group of sets. This too can vary, but generally the Weider system recommends from 3 to 5 sets of any exercise and from 12 to 16 sets for any body part, with a few less for some body parts and certain kinds of training, and a few more for others. In bodybuilding training, you can end up resting for a shorter or longer period of time depending on what kind of set you're doing. For mass training, for example, in tape 7, you rest for several minutes. Using certain intensity techniques in tape 9, you may not rest at all between sets. But for the purposes of getting started with the Weider system workouts, you should rest from 30 to 60 seconds between sets. Or if you're training with a workout partner, do your set, rest while your partner does their set, then jump back in and do your next set.
You usually want to do somewhere between 8 and 12 or 15 repetitions in a set. So it is important to increase the weight because that's putting a different type of pressure that the body has to respond to.
In the early days of the sport, bodybuilders trained like weightlifters, training the whole body 3 times per week. But they soon found out that you can't train the whole body in one workout and still have sufficient intensity for all the body parts. So eventually they began following a system which Joe Weider called the split system of training, in which only part of the body is trained at any given workout and the entire body is trained over a period of days. The split system of training takes several forms.
One of the most popular types of training schedule is 3 days on, 1 day off. This is one example. Day 1, chest, shoulders, triceps, calves, abs. Day 2, back, biceps, forearms, calves, abs. On the 3rd day, thighs, hamstrings, abs. And on day 4, rest. And this is an example of a workout arranged over a 4-day period. Day 1, chest, triceps, abs. Day 2, back, biceps, forearms, calves. Day 3, thighs, hamstrings, abs. And on day 4, shoulders and calves. And on the 5th day, you rest.
Now, of course, you're not a machine, so you want to make sure you get plenty of rest. If you need a day off, don't feel bad about taking that extra day off. Your recovery time is just as important as going in the gym and training hard. Overtraining can be devastating to your workout. It can cause an injury. So it's very important to train hard, but take that extra day of rest if you need it.
Remember that overtraining, pushing your body too hard, increases your chances of injury. Therefore, you can add an extra rest day at any point in your workout program. Or if you're especially tired, try taking 2 days rest at the end of your 3-day routine or your 4-day routine. The point is, the more you're able to rest and recover, the stronger you'll be in your workouts and the better your body will respond.
With the double split training system, you train twice a day instead of once, training a major body part in the morning and doing detail work or cardiovascular training in the second workout. Using this system, you're actually doing less rather than more because you're doing much of the work you'd normally do in one training session and dividing it into 2.
Here's an example. Day 1, AM, chest, shoulders. PM, triceps, calves, abs. Day 2, AM, back, biceps. PM, forearms, calves, abs. Day 3, AM, thighs, hamstrings. PM, abs. And on the 4th day, rest.
It takes me 4 days to cover the full body. I train chest and biceps on day 1. On day 2, I train legs. And if you didn't notice, I train chest and biceps on day 1, which is part of, upper body. So then on day 2, I'm covering legs. So while I'm training legs, my upper body is getting a day of rest. Day 3, I go to shoulders and triceps, so I'm back to my upper body again. And day 4, I train back. And day 5 is my day off, and then I start over again.
I work with a split system. I split my body over 4 days, so that after my 4th days, I finished my whole body training.
When I started training, I was 16 years of age, so obviously I started on a 3 times a week schedule. I would do 1 exercise per muscle group, probably on a 10-8-6 basis, you know, 10 reps the first, 8 reps the same poundage, and 6 on the principle that my energy was diminishing. And of course it wasn't, but that's the way I thought, that my energy was diminishing. So I would do 10, 8, and 6. And as I progressed, then I started to realize that if I wanted to do more work and more overloading, I would have to work on split routines. So I would kind of split the body into 2 parts.
So now, was this training twice a day or just once?
No, this is once a day.
Right.
The only time I trained twice a day was 3 weeks before my first national contest, Mr. Britain. I just finished my business administration degree, and I had 3 weeks to train, and so for 3 weeks I trained morning and night. I trained twice a day.
I'll do a heavy and a light system, like 3 days on, 1 day off, and I'll go heavy on the first cycle, and then I'll go light for the next body part. And vice versa, it goes like that. The 4th day being my off day. I think all bodybuilders in general know that rule, and they use that.
You hear all sorts of theories about how to train for cuts and definition, or train for tone rather than building. Most of these ideas don't really conform to how the body actually works. However, you can get different responses from the body depending on which muscles you're training, how many muscles you're training in one exercise, what kind of exercises you do, what kind of equipment you use, and what kind of intensity techniques you employ. In general, you build mass most effectively by doing 2-joint exercises. Exercises that involve the movement of 2 joints rather than 1. Doing exercises that use a lot of muscles rather than working smaller areas in isolation. Training with free weights, barbells, and dumbbells rather than machines or cables. And using the kind of mass-building techniques that are described in detail in Tape 7. Quality training for things like definition, separation between muscles, and the development of the small muscles generally results from doing 1-joint exercises. Training smaller muscles or muscle groups in isolation. Using a variety of free weights, machines, and cables. And using as many of the Weider intensity principles, such as full range of motion, peak contraction, supersetting, and others detailed in Tape 9. And when you combine effective mass training with quality training based on the Weider intensity principles, the result is a complete and balanced bodybuilding physique. You generally build muscle more easily with free weights than with machines, because the body responds to something that is heavy more fully than resistance, which is merely hard. In fact, our bodies have evolved over millions of years to recognize and deal with weight. But little in our evolutionary history has prepared the body for pushing a resistance that slides back and forth along a track or rotates on a cam. When you lift a free weight against the force of gravity, not only do you use the specific muscles involved in the lift, but the rest of the body gets involved as well. The joints have to work to balance and control the weight, and the various stabilizer muscles associated with the joint come under stress as well. When you exercise with many machines, there's no need to stabilize, no need for the ligaments of the joints to adapt, and you tend to work only the muscle involved in that specific movement, not the associated stabilizer muscles. This results in much less adaptation and, in fact, can be dangerous because you've developed certain muscles in a group out of proportion to the others. So when it comes to basic mass and strength development, free weights are far superior.
I myself am a firm believer in free weights, heavy free weights for building mass. Lower repetitions, not too low, where you're just going to pump out 4 or 5 and then just drop the weight. You want heavy weights and good repetitions, good muscle control, and plenty of protein to build that mass with. Free weights, you know, I mean, free weights are it. Basic heavy movements is the way I consider it. That's what I've always used, basic heavy movements to build size, not to get into contest shape per se, but you have to have the frame there to carve it out.
In my opinion, it's a lot better to use a free weight than using a machine in general, because the free weights, your body responds a lot better to your free weight, because it's like you can keep your natural movements in, and the body is built to use free weights, not to use machines. So your body responds a lot better, plus your nervous system and everything is very much in action. So your body growth is much more stimulated than using a machine.
But machines and cables can also be valuable. They work well when you want to isolate specific areas of the body. They are also effective when you're doing higher rep training, in which the stress of an individual repetition is not as important as the cumulative effect of a number of repetitions. For example, supersets, trisets, and giant sets, as described in tape 9. Exercise machines are also essential when resistance training is being used to rehabilitate injuries, as described in tape 10. When you're recovering from an injury, having the injured area securely stabilized as you build up its strength is one of the keys to successful rehabilitation.
You still should use machines maybe to isolate some muscle groups, and altogether makes the whole package. So you need it both.
Yet it's not the hardware development that's created the tremendous progress in our ability to develop the body. It's the software, the training principles and techniques, which you'll learn about as part of the Weider system.
Later tapes will deal with all sorts of advanced Weider intensity principles, but there are certain basic principles that you should learn and employ right from the beginning. The first is full range of motion. During each of your exercises, you need to go from the full extension of the muscle to the full contraction and back. Don't settle for working in a partial range of motion. At the top of the movement, try pausing and squeezing the muscle a little harder to obtain a full peak contraction. Second, control the weight. Never throw a weight around. Don't get careless. Just learn to concentrate and keep total control of the weight in every rep of every set. Third, no cheating. Cheating in weight training refers to using extra muscles or techniques like swinging the weight up using inertia to help perform the lift. Instead, lift and lower the weight using the specific muscles involved in that lift, with no help from other muscles and no cheating.
I don't cheat. I don't use cheating principles. Sometimes I will when I'm weaker and I'm dieting and I'm not feeling really energy. I'll need to cheat a little bit because I don't have a trainer or someone that helps me.
Fourth, continuous tension. When you lift or lower a weight, you should feel your muscles working smoothly throughout the whole range of motion. This means not only lifting the weight under control to a position of peak contraction, but lowering the weight under control as well, rather than letting it drop.
Throughout the movement, you keep the tension on that body part, so you never really lock out, because a lot of times when you lock out, you know, you could stay in that position for quite some time. There's no pain there. So what you want to do is keep the tension on that body part.
Fifth, keeping the mind in the muscle. Remember, you're training muscles, not lifting weights. Don't think about the weight, think about the muscle and what it's doing.
It's very important to mentally prepare yourself before going to a gym for a workout. If you're going to a gym to fraternize, then I wouldn't worry about mentally preparing yourself. But when you go to a gym to work out, which is what you should be doing, you have to concentrate, especially on the muscle that you're working. There's a mind-muscle link there where your body is going to react the way your mind feels. If you feel up for a workout, then you're going to get a great workout. If you feel lackadaisical and you don't really want to go to the gym, then there's no way you're going to get a good workout.
About your quadriceps, okay, in the first repetition, and thinking about the movement on the way up and the movement going down. And when you're really thinking about it, then the chances of injury are slim, you know, and the chances of that muscle responding is even better because you're really concentrating. So I think that that's what the key is, and that's what's most important.
Bodybuilding, when it's done properly, involves learning a lot of skills. So it's going to pay for your success to learn those skills properly from the very beginning.
Here is a summation of the basic principles and training methods you've learned about in this tape. Train smart as well as hard. Bodybuilding type weight training is a very specific and intense method of changing the basic muscle structure of the body. And the key to success in bodybuilding training is utilizing all of the Weider training principles. Utilize the progressive resistance training principle. To make your muscles grow bigger and stronger, you have to contract them against the appropriate amount of weight. But as they adapt and begin to grow, that weight becomes too light to cause continued adaptation and the muscles stop responding. At that point, you add weight to the exercise to challenge the muscles further and continue to add weight on a progressive basis to keep pace with the continuing development of your muscle structure. Do from 8 to 12 repetitions in most of your sets. Bodybuilders aren't weightlifters and shouldn't use a weight that allows them to do too few sets. They aren't endurance athletes either, and shouldn't do very high repetitions in most of their training. Bodybuilders have learned that a muscle responds best to an amount of resistance equal to about 70 to 75% of its 1 rep maximum strength. Using this amount of weight generally allows you to do from 8 to 12 reps in any given set. Do from 3 to 5 sets per exercise, 12 to 16 sets per body part. Too few sets and the muscles may get big but will lack detail. Too many sets will limit the amount of size and strength you can achieve and increase your risk of injury through overtraining. Rest about 30 seconds to 1 minute between sets. This gives you enough recovery time to allow you to generate sufficient intensity in your next set, but is not so long that your training pace becomes too sluggish. Take advantage of the Weider split system principle. For most bodybuilders, a schedule of 3 days training followed by 1 day rest seems to work the best, although some prefer using a 4-day on, 1 day off split instead. Base your training program on the use of free weights. The body responds best to the resistance provided by free weights, where the muscles, joints, ligaments, and tendons are forced to cope with the force of gravity. So the most effective bodybuilding training program utilizes about 2/3 free weights versus 1/3 cables and machines. Train with full range of motion repetitions. For maximum quality and development, Do each repetition through the fullest range of motion you can achieve comfortably, from a position of full extension to that of full contraction. Do not, however, overstretch the structures involved, or you could increase the risk of training injury. Train with continuous tension. You should feel the muscle working continuously against the resistance throughout the range of motion of the exercise. Lift the weight under full control and lower it under full control. This helps you to avoid cheating, using inertia to help throw the weight up, and the mistake of letting the weight drop during the negative part of the exercise. Keep your mind in the muscle. Learn to feel what muscles are working in any exercise and concentrate on exactly what they are doing at all times. Technique is of little use without feel, and you develop feel in bodybuilding training by focusing your attention on your muscles rather than on the weight they're lifting. Remember, you're training muscle, not lifting weights, so keep your mind in the muscle at all times for the maximum effective workouts. Train to momentary muscular failure. Except when you're doing something like power training as described in tape 7, you should train to failure in each set. Training to failure actually means training to momentary muscular failure and is not the same as working to total exhaustion. It simply means you keep going in that set using that weight until you can't do any more repetitions without stopping to rest.
The split system is one of the most important principles. Without the utilization of the Weider split system in your workout, you'll never be able to achieve a symmetrical, proportionate, muscular body. Learn it, apply it, and you would develop the body that you always wanted. Now that you know how to use the split system, let's put it to use. In the next tape, my champions will show you how to apply the back exercises and the bicep exercises to broaden your back and give you bigger and more massive and more muscular arms.
The key to me getting the best workout I possibly can every day is just to be very organized and to have some type of schedule. You know, I can't go in one morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and the next day at 5 o'clock at night. I like to train at the same time every day, and I like to eat like 2 hours before I train. And my schedule has to be very organized in order for me to get the best workout possible.
I've developed my physique to the point to where I'm happy with it, you know, with the size and everything, and I don't want to overpower anything. So just to keep everything in balance, you know, more looking for the shape and balancing everything out now.
What I'd say to a woman just starting out in, let's say, weight training, and she doesn't really want to be a bodybuilder, is that the key is consistency, and basically to come in and learn the basic exercises. Learn what exercises go for what body parts.
And the benefits that you get from a physical point of view, from a mental point of view, from a strength point of view, even from an emotional point of view, goes into the full aspect of your life and makes for better living and a better person and a better society.
Procrastination is the robber of opportunity. It's the great thief of time and opportunity. You know, and I think that there's no better time to do it than to do it right now.
You got to be motivated. When I started bodybuilding, I weighed 114 pounds. You know, I'm a diabetic. I'm 5 foot 4.5 inches tall. I won Mr. Universe, Mr. America. The only way that you can really do it is if you have it inside. You got to want it.
There is no excuses of being tired or sick or having a cold. You have to do it or get out.
In this tape, my champions will show you 20 of the best exercises to develop your back and your biceps. These exercises are programmed to develop your upper back, your lower back, your lats, to give you a muscular V-shaped back, and also define your arms, making them bigger, more defined, with a higher peak. A back and arms that you will truly be proud of.
The primary muscles of the middle and upper back are the latissimus dorsi and the rhomboids. These muscles have two basic functions. They pull the entire shoulder girdle back and to a lesser extent pull it down. Pullback exercises pull the entire shoulder girdle to the rear in opposition to the pectoral muscles, which attach the shoulders to the front. Pullback exercises are all rowing movements. The shoulders start from a position in which they're shrugged fully forward. The pectoral muscles are squeezed and the back muscles are stretched. Now pull backwards against the resistance until the shoulders are as far to the rear as possible. The shoulder blades are almost touching.
The primary muscles of the upper back are the latissimus dorsi, which extends, abducts, and rotates the arm medially, draws the shoulder downward and backward, and the rhomboideus major and minor, which draw the scapula medially toward the vertebral column.
Pull-down exercises, such as chins or cable pull-downs, involve a more limited motion. At the start of the movement, the shoulder girdle is lifted upwards as if you're trying to touch your shoulders to your ears. You then pull down against resistance as far as you can in a reverse shrug motion, fully contracting your back muscles. Pullback exercises account for about 2/3 of back development. Pull-down movements contribute about 1/3.
The weak link in back training is the biceps. The back is a large muscle, whereas the biceps are small. The amount of weight needed to build the back, the biceps cannot handle. So the key is to keep the arms out of the movement. You want to use the arms as hooks instead of using them to curl the weight. When rowing is done this way, the arms are only used to connect the weight to the body. They don't assist in actually lifting the weight. For the same reason, when you do a chin or a pull-down movement, you have to concentrate on doing most of the work with the lats, with the shoulders being pulled downward and the arms not bending much, but serving merely as hooks to connect you to the bar overhead. Another problem to avoid is too much involvement of the lower back. When you row or pull down, you should avoid cheating by pulling with the lower back and swaying to the rear, or else the primary muscles you're targeting in the exercises don't get enough work.
The basic movement in the lower back training is simple. You start from a bent over position and then you stand erect. You bend over to pick something up, then you stand up straight again. This lifting and straightening of the torso involves direct action of the spinal erectors. Since the normal function of the spinal erectors is to stabilize rather than work through a full range of motion, they are the slowest muscles in the body to recuperate fully from exercise. Therefore, they only need to be worked once a week. You can avoid overtraining the lower back by alternating light and heavy workouts. Incidentally, you'll find that the use of the lower back muscles occurs to some degree in a variety of other different movements.
Bent-over rows are one of the best but most demanding mass builders for the back. You need to grasp the bar with a wide enough grip to make the lats do most of the work rather than the biceps. And be sure to drive the bar upwards to the lower abs, not to the chest. Otherwise, you have the same problem of involving too much biceps effort. Most bodybuilders do bent-over rows with fairly heavy weight to build maximum mass, which makes it difficult to do the exercise without at least some cheating. This is acceptable if you're careful not to straighten up too much during the exercise and concentrate on squeezing the shoulders back as far as possible at the top of the movement. However, when you do bent-over rows with somewhat lighter weights, it is possible to do this exercise a lot more strictly. But in either case, the essential things to remember are to lift and squeeze with the back, bringing the shoulders as far as possible to the rear, and try to keep any cheating involving the legs or lifting up with the lower back to a minimum. T-bar rows are a stricter form of bent-over rowing. With this exercise, cheating is not recommended at all. Bend your knees, get yourself in as stable and grounded a position as possible, then pull the weight up toward your chest, shrugging your shoulders back as far as possible to squeeze the back muscles together. Then let the shoulders come forward again and feel the big muscles of the back extend and stretch to the maximum. Concentrate on keeping the weight under full control throughout the entire range of motion in this exercise. Again, concentration is the key. Use T-bar rowing to carve and sculpt the maximum detail possible into the muscles of the upper middle back.
The T-bar for me is the bread and butter. When you think of thickness, back thickness, you think of what exercise allows you to move the maximum amount of weight and the most comfortable way to move it. The T-bar is a close grip movement. You're bringing the weight, the upper back middle muscles are contracting maximally. There's no long stretch of the lat involved here, simply because you're concentrating on the upper middle. And that's the area of the back where a lot of activity can be developed in today's bodybuilders, which will give you that resemblance of Albert Beckles, for example, with that type of detail. You don't get that detail by doing one-arm rows. And a lot of young guys and professionals today are doing, sticking to the same regime. I like to now think that there's a little step to go beyond that, and you have to bring those secondary muscles into play. T-bar gives you mass and thickness, and that's what that section of my back training will always consist of.
Using one-arm rows, you can isolate each side of the upper back in turn. However, this exercise can be more difficult to do than it seems. For one thing, be sure to bring the dumbbell back toward your hip rather than up toward your chest and shoulder, which turns the movement into more of a curl than a back exercise. And when you lift, concentrate on the feeling of squeezing your back muscles together. Both sides, not just the side with which you're lifting. Otherwise, you'll tend to rotate your body as you lift rather than making the big back muscles do the work by themselves. For maximum stability, try leaning with your free arm on a bench, weight rack, or some other support to keep your body steady and fully grounded throughout the movement. Chins are probably the most traditional of all pull-down type back exercises. However, they can be very difficult because you are dealing with your entire body weight in this exercise, and women in particular have trouble starting out working against this much resistance. If chins are too tough for you at the beginning, try building up your strength with cable pull-downs, or have a workout partner hold on to your ankles to provide the lift you need to do your set of chins. If you have difficulty holding onto the bar during chins, wrist straps can be used to help strengthen and secure your grip. Chins can be done behind the neck, which is a very strict and demanding form of the exercise, or to the front, which is slightly easier since some of the pullback function of the back mixes in to help in the pull-down effort. Ideally, you should try to include both behind the neck and front chins in your various workouts for maximum back development.
The most impressive thing to me is when a bodybuilder is standing on stage in the relaxed pose and they have the V taper from the lats down to a small waist and then their small hips, and then they come out with the balloon thighs. So for me, when I train my back, I always envision what I want to look like on stage, and I really want to have that small waist, and to get that, I've got to have the illusion of a big wide back. So I concentrate a lot on doing wide grip chins.
Cable rows are an intense exercise for the upper middle back. As you lower the weight, you should concentrate on feeling the shoulders being pulled as far forward as possible, rounding the back, stretching the lats, and squeezing the pectoral muscles together. As you pull the handles back, focus on bringing the shoulders as far back as possible, squeezing the shoulder blades together, and sticking out your chest. At the top of the movement, it's as if you're coming to attention. Chest out, shoulders back. One mistake to watch out for doing cable rows is involving too much lower back. As you stretch forward, do so from the upper back, with the shoulders coming forward and lats stretching. Don't bend forward from the waist any more than is necessary. Otherwise, you end up working the spinal erectors of the lower back, which takes away the intensity from the upper back muscles you're trying to target. As with all rowing exercises, think in terms of using the back to pull the shoulders to the rear, and try to limit how much work the arms are doing. Biceps will be involved any time you curl your arms, but think of the arms merely as hooks that help connect the back to the resistance of the weight stack, rather than as muscles primarily involved in the exercise. Remember, strictness and range of motion are the keys to cable rows. Use a weight that's light enough to allow your shoulders to go all the way forward and all the way back. Otherwise, you won't be able to involve the smaller muscles of the upper back, and you'll end up with mass, but not enough detail.
Your seated cable rows, for example, are a repetitious movement of the T-bar. I think if you notice the direction of the weight, how it's being pulled to the chest at each level, one, you're simply seated, the other one, you're bent over, the same movement. You know, it's the exact same movement. You become smarter and clever, I think, by utilizing the row, seated row, to do more of the contracting movements and not trying to move the whole rack by seated. Do the T-bar, let that be the mass builder and work that same area, but you have much more control and that inertia and gravity is on your side.
You'll find a variety of different types of rowing machines in most good gyms. Most of these machines give you support against which to lean your chest, which helps you to stabilize your torso and work the back that much more strictly. Rowing with machines is generally not recommended for building mass and strength, but machines do allow you to work through a long range of motion and to bring out all the detail and muscularity of the upper back. The keys to machine rowing are strict technique, full range of motion, lighter weights, and relatively high reps. And as with all rows, concentrate on pulling back with the shoulders, not the arms. Pull downs are a variation of chins, which allow you to work with different levels of resistance, less than your body weight, or when necessary, more than your body weight. The strictest kind of pull down movement is the behind the neck pull down. In this exercise, the feeling you want to concentrate on is that of the entire shoulder girdle being lifted upward, then shrugging back down as the bar is brought down to the back of the neck. This feeling of the shoulder girdle, which includes the shoulders, trapezius muscles, and shoulder blades, the whole thing, lifting upward as far as possible, then crunching down as far as possible, is what you need to concentrate on to get the maximum benefit from the behind the neck pull downs. Again, Try to keep the arms out of the exercise as much as you can. Remember, although the biceps will contract during this movement, it is not designed to be a biceps exercise. Again, think of the arms merely as hooks that attach the back muscles to the bar. Stretch the lats on the way up and then squeeze and crunch them on the way down, with the effort focused on the back muscles, not the arms. Wide grip pull downs to the front are another variation of the pull-down movement which bodybuilders use primarily to build maximum width in the latissimus muscles. In this variation, the bar is brought down to the top of the chest rather than behind the neck. However, don't lean too far back as you bring the bar down, otherwise you involve too much lower back effort. Holding the bar with a close grip, the pull-down movement tends to focus the effort on the inner muscles of the upper back. With this variation, it's really easy to make the mistake of using too much arm effort and turning the exercise into some kind of biceps curl. Instead, concentrate on making the back do the work. Feel it stretch, then contract, and use the arms simply as hooks to connect your back to the resistance of the weight. And at the bottom of the movement, try to achieve a maximum peak contraction of the muscles in the center of the upper back. Contract them as intensely as possible at the bottom of the movement before releasing and letting the bar draw the shoulder girdle upward again.
When I'm using the wide grip pull down, for example, my whole concentration is for width. You know, I'm training width, therefore the execution is very important. My execution of it is making sure that my back is arched, the weight is going horizontal, up and down, not vertical, because I find too many people training that movement are leaning way back. You know, they may as well be doing seated rowing, trying to get the same result. For me, doing the lat pull down is an isolation movement, contracting the movement at the top, squeezing it down, halfway down, contracting even more, holding it and releasing it slowly, controlling the weight back up, getting more from the negative just as much as a positive on the push-pull of the execution. So when I do the lat pull down, it's all about the width. You know, it's not about the weight, because I don't see you getting weight adding to your width. You have to control the width movement.
Performing hyperextensions on a hyperextension bench. The key to success is slow, deliberate movements done under full control. The spinal erectors of the lower back are stabilizer muscles. They aren't designed for speed or power. So lower your upper body under full control. Pause at the bottom. Then come deliberately up to a position just above parallel and hold this position for a moment before doing your next rep. Good mornings get their name from the bowing motion you use to work the lower back muscles. As with hyperextensions, you want to do this movement very deliberately and strictly and under full control at all times. Bend forward from the waist with a bar held across your shoulders. Come down until your upper body is about parallel to the floor. If you keep your knees bent slightly during the movement, you'll take some of the excess stress off the lower back. Also, this is not a mass and power exercise. You use deadlifts to build maximum strength in the lower back area, as you'll see in tape number 7. So stick to light to medium weight and very strict technique to get the most out of good mornings. Back routine number 1. Bent over rows. 4 sets of 10 reps. Behind the neck chins. 4 sets of 10 reps. Cable rows. 4 sets of 10 reps. Behind the neck are wide grip pull downs. 4 sets of 10 reps. Hyper extensions. 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps.
Don't monitor your progress based on the people you're around or the pictures you see in the magazines. Monitor your progress based on your commitment to your diet, your commitment to your working out, your intensity levels, and what you see in the mirror.
On one day, I may not do any T-bar. Everything will be cable. We'll do about 6 different movements, some of which I've invented, I think, you know, long as it gets the job done. I'm very smart to a point. I don't want to use movements that are going to cause injury just for the sake of using extra weight. So cable work could be used extensively, but the weight will also be compatible to the movement.
Back routine number 2. T-bar rows. 4 sets of 10 reps. Front chins. 4 sets of 10 reps. One-arm dumbbell rows. 4 sets of 10 reps. Close grip pull downs. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Good morning. 4 sets of 12 to 15 reps.
You take the back, for instance. I mean, the guys with the best backs in my day were guys like Eiferman, Jack Dillinger, and all these guys were
all past Mr. Americas.
All past Mr. Americas. All guys who were big into movements like bent over rowing, barbell bent over rowing. All had phenomenal backs. Ida and I were using 400 pounds 40 years ago and rowing. Yeah,
that's incredible. And how many repetitions?
8, 6s and 8s. But I think this is one of the things that molded the backs of that particular period. You know, if you look at the backs of that particular period, there were some great backs. Jack Dillinger's back way back in 48, 49 was comparable to a lot of guys today.
Right.
You know, Marvin Ida had the death.
Rounded,
and I think that has to be done, but by the same rule. Not just that, not purely and simply that, but shape work with one-arm dumbbell work and overhead, so you work in scapular isolations, getting length of latissimus, not only getting depth of latissimus.
You really got to train your back, and you got to take more importance on form and not so much importance on weight. You don't have to become a bodybuilder in order to have a strong back and have a good posture, but you have to at least train it.
Control the weight. Don't let it control you. And to squeeze in the repetitions, control it. That brings in the detail. That brings in that growth. Get you past the sticking point.
The biceps are a two-headed structure. that originate at the shoulder and insert into the forearm below the elbow. Now, the basic exercise for the bicep is a curl, which is a one-jointed isolation movement that goes from the elbow. The basic function of the bicep, though, is to curl the forearm up to the shoulder, and that's going to oppose the strength of the tricep. Although they also help to lift the whole arm and to also supinate the forearm. This type of curl hits the muscles slightly different, but they all involve pulling the forearm up to the shoulder.
The biceps brachii is a two-headed muscle placed on the anterior aspect of the upper arm that flexes the arm, flexes the forearm, and supinates the hand. The long head draws the humerus, the upper arm bone, upward, strengthening the shoulder joint.
In biceps training, the emphasis is on control and isolation. Heavy weights aren't needed. Your back training gives you plenty of that. For example, heavy rowing, a two-joint movement, also puts a lot of demand on the biceps. You're better off concentrating on isolating the biceps to minimize the involvement of other muscles. Avoid the heavy cheat type of movements. You'll find that some exercises are tougher than others to isolate the biceps. Standing barbell curls, for instance, must involve the front delts, traps, and lower back. Just keep concentrating on your biceps isolation as much as you can. It's easier with such exercises as the preacher curl. It's ideal for biceps isolation, as are many kinds of cable and machine curls.
Bodybuilders tend to drastically overtrain their arms. Both biceps and triceps are such small muscles, and as we said, they are subject to a lot of stress when you train your back, your chest, and your shoulders. So you don't need to do endless sets and reps during your arm workouts. I mean, 12 sets each for biceps and triceps is plenty. And I know a lot of bodybuilders who prefer doing less.
This is a good place to talk about supination. Any bodybuilder will tell you that to fully peak the biceps when you hit a pose, you need to twist the wrist or supinate it as far as possible. This applies to training as well. As you are lifting the weight during a dumbbell curl, twist the wrist slightly, turn your thumb outward as you do the curl.
Barbell curls are the closest thing to a mass builder you'll find in biceps training. However, since this is still a one-joint isolation exercise, you don't want to pile on too much poundage. Working too heavy means you have to cheat too much, and you end up building your traps and lower back rather than isolating your biceps. To do barbell curls effectively, keep your upper body steady throughout the movement and the weight under full control. Feel a steady, continuous tension as you raise and lower the weight. When you curl the weight to the top, feel the biceps fully contract, and at the bottom, let your biceps muscles fully stretch and extend. As with any isolation movement, the key to success is control and concentration. Think about what the muscles are doing and how they feel rather than what's happening to the weight.
The biomechanics for the curl, for instance, you want to always go through the full range of motion. Some athletes have a tendency to do these short, jerky kind of ranges. Well, there aren't many things that you do in just this motion. You want to build strength throughout that range of motion. and be in control of the resistance throughout the range of motion. You don't want to throw the weight up because, again, what goes up must come down, and then you deal with inertial forces of gravity, acceleration, as well as the weight itself. You want to control that weight.
Alternate dumbbell curls allow you to isolate and work each biceps muscle individually. As you curl with one arm and then with the other, concentrate on supinating your wrists as you lift. That is, turning your hand so that the thumb goes outward and downward. This gives you a total peak contraction of the biceps at the top of the movement. You can do dumbbell curls by alternating first one arm and then the other, which is a very strict form of the movement. Or you can curl both arms simultaneously. For additional strictness, try doing dumbbell curls sitting on an inclined bench. However, no matter what variation you choose, remember to concentrate on controlling the weight at all times, performing a smooth, continuous movement, and keeping the mind in the muscle. Think about what the biceps are doing rather than the weight. Dumbbell curls, especially when you supinate the wrist during the exercise, are designed to give you the maximum peak possible in the biceps. Hammer curls, on the other hand, because you pronate your wrist about 90 degrees when you do the movement, tend to focus the effort on the outer head of the biceps on the outside of the arm. You can feel this happening when you do the lift. In fact, with hammer curls and all other exercises, you should make an effort to feel exactly how different grips and different variations change the way your muscles feel during the movement. This awareness of what the muscles are doing, the ability to keep your mind totally in the muscle, is one of the keys to developing maximum intensity in bodybuilding training.
Some athletes are so interested in the size and definition of their bicep, they'll do many sets of curls over and over and over again. And sometimes the bicep can start to spasm because this person has done so many sets for just one body part. So it's important to not only go through the full range of motion while you're training that body part, but at the termination of your curl or bicep motions, to go through a range of motion with an easy stretch.
Concentration curls, as the name implies, involve the most concentration and isolation of the biceps exercises. The idea is to curl the weight up towards your chest, using only the biceps with no help from any other muscles. Some bodybuilders like doing concentration curls with their arms hanging free. But many others prefer grounding themselves more fully by leaning their elbow against the inside of the thigh, making it even easier to totally isolate the biceps muscles. Preacher curls are another good isolation exercise for the biceps. By keeping the elbows firmly in place on the bench, you can ensure that only the biceps are doing the work in the movement. However, anytime you lock the elbows in place like this, you're putting more stress on them. So use preacher curls as a detail peaking exercise, and be sure not to use so much weight that you risk putting too much stress on the elbow joint. When you do preacher curls, you can use a barbell, an easy curl bar, or you can further isolate each biceps muscle by doing preacher dumbbell curls, one arm at a time. You'll find a variety of different curl machines in most well-equipped gyms. These machines allow you to do curls against smooth, continuous resistance and frequently feature some kind of cam-created variable resistance. As with other machines like these, they are best used for higher rep, lower resistance, finishing off sets. With machine curls, you shouldn't expect to build a great deal of mass and strength. So instead, go for full range of motion, very strict, detail and quality movements. Cables allow you to do a great variety of different kinds of curl movements. You can perform one-arm cable curls as demonstrated here, or you can use a bar instead of a handle and do the cable equivalent of standing barbell curls. By combining a preacher bench with different kinds of handles, you can do various kinds of preacher curls and one-arm preacher curls. Remember in all cases that a curl is a curl is a curl. No matter what kind of equipment you're using, free weights, cables, machines, it's what you do with the muscle that counts. Feel the biceps extend to full extension, then contract smoothly under control to achieve a total peak contraction.
One thing to remember when you're training biceps is they get a large volume of work when you're training other compound movements like back, and it's getting a tremendous amount of work. That's why it's so important to isolate the bicep and not cheat and not end up using your traps and shoulders and pecs when you're training your biceps by themselves. You have to learn to isolate and concentrate on the muscle group you're training.
Biceps routine number 1. Standing barbell curls. 4 sets of 10 reps. Seated dumbbell curls. 4 sets of 10 reps. Concentration curls. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Biceps routine number 2. Easy bar curls. 4 sets of 10.